Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are delighted to be talking to the very talented André Holland, who is the star of the upcoming Apple TV Plus limited series, The Big Cigar. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members on the call today, starting with Nigel Chambers in New York.
Or
uh,
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C., Sam Leggett in Washington, D.C., Ruben Regaud in Miami, Florida, Reggie Pounder in Chicago, Illinois, Dana Abercrombie in New York, New York, and Nancy Green in Los Angeles. And we will later be joined by Chris Stiles, who will be coming in from Cleveland. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
The story I'm about to tell you is how I, Huey P. Newton, the Black Panther Party founder, was set free into a prison. I envision a world beyond conflict and violence. I want to transform society. This is just the beginning.
Talk about a star. That guy's a star.
Verdict. Richard Pryor as Huey P. Newton in the Huey Newton story. Well, don't we look alike?
Not really.
The FBI has been pursuing Huey Newton for years. They saw the programs worked and change was happening.
We are trying to stop an enemy of the state.
A massive nationwide manhunt is now underway.
Where am I supposed to go?
You should check out Bert. He's willing to do whatever it takes.
They're expecting you at every crossing.
Hey, that's why I'm leaving the country.
You're gonna need disguises, transportation.
You're the hotshot producer, man. Produce this.
This is a dangerous idea.
I didn't know I was having company.
All right, listen up. We're gonna get Huey to Cuba in the next 48 hours.
What we do is we make it look like it's one of your movies.
It's a location shoot as far as the feds are concerned. We got hair, makeup, wardrobe.
What movie are we talking about?
The Big Cigar.
I mean, I love The Big Cigar, man.
We need to secure a boat.
The Big Cigar is lit.
I am willing to fight with you because I believe in you.
We got company.
They must have followed somebody unless somebody told them where to go.
The FBI is gonna rain fire.
This is our lives, Bert.
Huey's fight is worth risking everything to do.
We're gonna beat the Beverly Hills 7, man.
They call you that after you're arrested.
Good evening. My name is Nigel Chambers. I'm from Big O Belt Media. Andre, thank you for the time today. Through your amazing yet transformative performance, can you talk and discuss sort of the mental and physical journey you went through in filming, especially considering the scene shot in solitary confinement, and then like what measures of work were needed once filming was completed to kind of remove from that, considering Huey's very in-depth, rich story and journey?
Yeah, thank you for the question, man. Yeah, the preparation process was pretty intense. I mean, you know, I started as I always start by doing as much research as I can, particularly when it comes to a character like this and a period of history like this, which is so important. So I, you know, read as much as I could, you know, pretty much everything he wrote. I had a vocal coach that I hired who helped me. You know, he has a very particular cadence in the way that he speaks, a very particular tone of voice that he uses. And so I wanted to try and capture as best I could the essence of that, you know, without it becoming like a mimicry, you know. So it was important to get a little bit of that. And then physically, you know, at the period at which we pick him up in the story, he's a big dude. So I spent as much time as I could as well in the gym trying to at least suggest the size that he actually had. I'm not a big dude myself, but I tried as best I could, eating a lot of chicken and trying to get there. But so yeah, and then in terms of shooting those and shooting the scenes, particularly the solitary confinement scene, that was one of the toughest days on set. You know, Huey writes in his book about his experiences in what they call the soul breaker. He writes in great detail about it, and it's, you know, it's horrible what happened to him, what was done to him. And so Don, Cheadle and I worked for quite a while trying to figure out what his state of mind might have been and how we want to capture it. And, Don being an actor really gave me space to just go for it. He got the cameras where he wanted them and just said, all right, just go for it. And so I kind of we tried to play it almost like a play, like we just kind of did it almost like a 3-act play. So it was intense. And then in terms of letting it go, it's funny. I feel like in some ways, I feel like parts of the characters that I play, stay with me in some ways. And so I still feel like a part of Huey is still somewhere within me. But thankfully, I was able to let go of some of the darker stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie, The Coalition. I'm very much fascinated by the evolution of the relationship between Huey and Bert Snyder. Can you please talk about finding the trust within that relationship in a time where everything is, you can't trust no one. Everyone is after you.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. That was one of the challenging parts about the series. There wasn't a whole lot obviously, the series is based on an article written by Joshua Bierman, and he did a lot of research, particularly on Bert and Huey and their relationship. So one of my first questions was, all right, show me everything you could find about this relationship, because I personally was curious about it. How is it that these two people actually came to trust one another? And as you said, at a time when, Huey and the Panthers were being constantly surveilled, the government, COINTELPRO, was working so hard to break them up. How is it that he came to trust this white guy, essentially? And there was some evidence that we found. I think what's clear is that they were friends, but what I was curious about is how did they become friends? And so part of the work that we tried to do was to slow down the development of that relationship, right? And not just, come into the series assuming that they're best friends, but to try to figure out, okay, let's show that Huey maybe was reluctant about this relationship, and let's see Bert earn Huey's trust and not just assume that, okay, Huey trusts him because, he seems like a trustworthy guy. It didn't really track for me. So we were able, I think, to kind of elongate the development of that relationship. And I mean, what's true is that there were people in Hollywood who supported the party, people who, I'm thinking about Brando, Jane Fonda, several other folks. And so, we had to honor that, the truth of that, and also honor the truth of the fact that, it's highly likely that Huey would have been very, very cautious about allowing people into his inner circle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Hey, how you doing, Andre? My name is Samuel Leggin with JVS Media Production. I just want to compliment you. Every role that you take, you completely immerse yourself into who the character embodies, whether that's film like Moonlight or a series like Castle Rock. The recent Exhibiting Forgiveness, one of the better films I've seen this year. And now you're tackling Huey. And I wanted to kind of get your concept, kind of piggyback off what Nate just said, the emotional complexities of who Huey is and what he represents even lays a foundation now. And so I know that, you did your research as far as historics, you read his diaries, but more than anything, getting the understanding of tone, like the show has great tone, it has a great balance, but you in the way that you perform it is also very equally important, because I think you're trying to convey something that's we can be able to gather here as who we are now as a people. And so I just wanted your perspective on that on an emotional level, what you invested in and what you think you're hoping for people to get from Huey Newton's life.
Oh man, what a great question. Thank you. And thank you for the compliment, man. I really, really, truly appreciate that. Like for real. Yeah, it's an interesting thing about acting. It's like I could talk for like an hour about this, but I'll keep it simple. I'll say this. Like, there are certain things that I learned about Huey along the way that became very, very important to me, things that I didn't know, right? For example, I didn't know that early in his life, he was bullied, for example. And so, I think that was a part of why he developed this sense of like bravado. Also, he was incredibly shy. Like, I know we have this image of him as this like powerful, outspoken revolutionary, but the truth is, the brother was really, really shy. He hated public speaking. He hated being in public, you know, in that way. Also, he learned to read like much later in life than like, not much later, but later in life as compared to some of his contemporaries. And so I think I imagine a person who isn't able to understand language, you know, um, early on has to like organize the world or learn to organize the world in a particular kind of way, you know? So for me, what was important was, you know, I wanted us to get the images, right? The wicker chair, the famous images, and the feel of power and the fervor of his commitment, all of which was true. But also I wanted to investigate and communicate uh, his like sensitivity, you know, and like who he was on the inside, at least at the beginning, right? Before the image became sort of larger than the man. That like at his core, you know, and at the beginning of the sort of inception of the party, it was, you know, they were about community programs, trying to get some kids breakfast before they went to school and trying to get people out of jail and get people access to education, you know, all of which are things that I think most reasonable people would agree are important, you know. So he did have a very complicated life, and he caused some harm as well, a lot of harm in ways. And but for me, it was important to communicate, yeah, the human being inside of this like image that we have of him. So I'm glad that you felt like some of that stuff came through, man. So thank you.
No, thank you, Andre.
Appreciate you.
My question, I wanted to know, I just, you know, one of the things that I noticed about the show is that there's a lot of humor, which I found kind of interesting, especially for Huey, like the story and how serious it is. So how did it work, like kind of infusing that into the series?
Yeah, it's a good question. That was one of the, you know, that was one of the kind of challenging things, is trying to figure out that balance. You know, for me personally, what attracted me to the series was Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party. And that was what my focus was. And, you know, in terms of like the humor, that part of it sort of came from the Hollywood characters, Steve and you know, Bird and those guys and their friends. So for me, I was just locked in on like trying to be honest about who this Huey P. Newton person is, trying to do as good a job as I could communicating what the kind of historical context was for the story, you know, what the movement was birthed out of, and, you know, acknowledging the kind of craziness and zaniness and humor that was going on around him without losing track of like the center of who this person is. That's what was important to me, you know. And I think it's, you know, it's not easy to find that balance, you know, and I think there were some days where we were like successful, and in some ways maybe we weren't as successful, you know what I mean, at striking the right balance. But I hope what people walk away from the series with, if nothing else, is an interest in the Panthers and a desire to learn more, you know, because this is just really, it's not like obviously an exhaustive look at Huey P. Newton or at the Black Panther Party, but more of like an opportunity to be introduced, you know, for people who weren't necessarily aware of this history.
Hi, Andre. I wanted to give you some compliments too, but Sam gave you all the compliments. So, no, but
I'll take them, man.
but you talked about this whole thing about balance, and you said, well, maybe we got it. Maybe I think from a tone and balance perspective, you guys actually did nail it. You were able to infuse some humor, and I think this whole thing that stuck with me is that this piece was really about relationships. It was about the relationships, but inside of the Panthers, and then obviously outside of the Panthers. And one of the things that I really liked that I think that Janine did was this depiction of how women were part of this movement. And I'd love to hear your take on that, because that we get a lot of times where women are kind of excluded out of the movement, and it seemed like you guys really made sure that that was not going to be part of it, that it was going to be a part of this particular program. So if you could speak to that, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That was something too that, I'll be honest, you know, coming into it, I was aware of some of the women who had been involved in the party, but I didn't know the extent to which they were. I mean, there was so many people, so many women that were contributing who haven't necessarily gotten the credit that they deserve. And so I do applaud, the writers and Janine for drawing attention to that, So I'm glad that you felt that way too. I think at the same time, you're talking about relationships, and I'm thinking about the relationship between Huey and Gwen as portrayed by Tiffany Boone, who I think is really wonderful. It felt really important, to all of us to make sure that that love story between the two of them stayed alive. This like Black love story that's like, set against like the ongoing struggle for Black liberation was really important, and in a way too was an opportunity to show again how involved women were in the movement. But just doing the research, man, you read about Kathleen Cleaver and obviously like Angela and Erica and like so many people who were there working day in and day out, to keep the movement alive. So again, I hope that people see the series and get curious about it and go and read more. And I think they'll be excited to learn just how many women were doing so much wonderful work.
Thank you so much. I really love your interaction with all those women, with all the women in there. It just was very, very powerful. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
Hi, Andre. My name is Ruben Peralta from Cocaleca.net. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How's Miami?
Miami's super hot and beautiful outside.
All right.
My question is, how was the feeling of being directed by another actor like Don Cheadle? Because I like the rhythm. I like how fast it goes. I like the dialogues, and I assume that has a lot of like Don Cheadle that I have seen in other characters, but I've never seen him as a director before. So how was that experience of working with another fellow actor as a director?
It was great. It was great. A lot of times when you work on things with directors who haven't acted, sometimes directors are a little bit scared of actors because we can be a little weird at times and a little intimidating. But with Don, we had a very easy way between the two of us and like a common language from the very beginning. And also, him being an actor, he can kind of spot when when I'm trying to get away with something or I'm not really giving it my best and so he was definitely good about pushing me to go further and dig deeper and try harder. And also like he was super supportive too. Coming into the series, there were a lot of things that were going on in my personal life that I was, dealing with at the same time. And so in addition to being like a great director and a great acting coach, he also was like a really great friend throughout the process too, which sometimes I think we forget that like, actors are people and we bring our stuff to work too and have to, work and be on camera despite what's going on in our own lives. But I just felt like Don did a really good job of like taking care of all the actors on set, which of course makes us want to work harder and, do our very best. So yeah, I salute him, man. He's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Hi, Chris Dowles from WOVU 95.9 FM, Cleveland, Ohio. Great series. Still completing it, but great series so far. I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen is the dynamic between Huey P. Newton and his dad. Can you expound more on that one? Because I think he's searching for something, throughout the conversations. And I want to know, I haven't caught it yet. Maybe my panelists caught it already, but I haven't caught, what is he searching for? Because his dad was giving him the right advice, but he still was searching or seeking more.
Yeah, it was, first of all, Glenn Turman is something else, ain't he? That, man, what a legend. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of what was happening in the series between the two of them was that generational kind of argument, his father being a man from the church and, wanting Huey to behave in a certain kind of way and have certain ideals. And then Huey being a young guy who is out seeing things and has a different idea about what he should be doing in terms of making change. And at the same time, that's his father, and he wants that closeness and that connection and his approval at the same time. So, yeah, it was, I would say that relationship Ooh, it moves me thinking about it because it makes me think about my own father. You know, it's one that I think was like really, I won't say difficult, but yeah, we spent a lot of time trying to investigate what that relationship was. And those scenes, particularly I'm thinking about there's a scene we shot where Huey comes to see his father in the hospital and, you know, having to come face to face with this man who you've disagreed with, and yet, you know, you see is like mortal and is fragile and is in need. Um, and trying to figure out how to like compartmentalize the parts of you that, you know, maybe don't agree with his politic from the parts of you that's like understands that that's your father, you know, and you owe him a certain amount of love and respect and care. Yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed that relationship. And also one other thing I'll say about it is that, and I didn't realize this until I went to Oakland and like visited some of the, you know, sites that, uh, you know, places where Huey lived and worked. And the place where Huey was actually killed, where he died, you know, I went to that spot, and at the end of that street is this church, and on top of that church is this huge steeple, and you know, a cross. And so I imagine that there's something kind of poetic to me about him ending his life in that place on that street, you know, and I imagine looking up and seeing, you know, that cross that I believe, you know, symbolized his father and his relationship with the church. So I think that dynamic was one that probably haunted him, you know, throughout his life, as I imagine it. Again, I don't know that to be true, but that was what I imagined as an actor to help me investigate the relationship.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
André, Samuel Leggett here again. So my follow-up question is about like you getting the script, getting the part, and kind of realizing what the undertaking was. Like, what was that like? One, kind of like, oh wow, like I get an opportunity to tackle this. But then two, what did it take following through with that? Because I mean, I can imagine there had to be some challenges, whether it's on set, whether it's like timing, whether it's confliction with other movies. What was it like for you getting the role and then kind of working through it?
Yeah, it was probably it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, for sure. There was a movie that I was attached to a number of years ago in which I was supposed to play Huey P. Newton. And it was a totally different script, obviously, and it was about Elaine Brown, and it was a beautiful script, and I thought it was going to happen. It didn't come together in the end, and I mourned it because I thought, man, I really wanted to have a chance to play this part. So when I got this script, I was initially excited and honored, and then, you know, the fear started coming in because you realize like this is an iconic character. He's incredibly complicated. Some folks love him, some folks don't love him, you know. And then also there's a lot of people who just don't know anything about him, you know. So it was an enormous responsibility, you know, and we shot over the course of like, I think a little over 4 months. As I said, there were a lot of things that were happening in my personal life at the time too, which made being away from home really, really complicated. So it was a heavy lift, man. Like every day was, you know, was a grind. And you know, I hope that one day, I hope I get to do it again one day, because there's so much more to uncover, so much more to investigate. But yeah, it was definitely one of the like biggest challenges of my career for sure.
No, you did amazing, man. And I think you're going to get the fruit back from it. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Reggie Ponder, the real critic here again. And André, this seemed to really have touched you, moved you, because as you're speaking, sitting here now talking about it, I mean, it's like you're like, man, I really feel the role, and even though you've been out of the role. And in the beginning of the piece, it talks about the contradictions of life and contradictions of this country. Can you speak to some of the contradictions that you found while trying to play this role? I mean, did you have some things inside of you like, wow, that's not me, that is me, I can see it, I can't see it. Can you speak to the contradictions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, Sam, is that Sam, right? No, I got your name wrong.
Reggie.
Reggie. I'm sorry,
That's all
Sam.
right. Sam is
Sorry.
always more important to me. He's good.
The boxes keep moving, so I'm like, wait a minute. Sorry about that, Reggie. So in terms of contradictions, one of the things that comes to mind is, Huey had a violent streak in him. You know what I mean? He had the capacity to be violent, and that part of it I found was challenging for me because I also could understand. I also saw him be like, or understood him to be like incredibly loving and kind and charming. That part I identify with, but the other part of him, the violent, the like darker parts of his personality, were kind of difficult for me to like hold both of those things at the same time. So that contradiction was a challenge. But that's also like what's exciting about playing a part like that. He's not just one thing. He's like a multitude of things. And as an actor, your job is to like, part of the job anyway, is to like advocate for your character, like really fight for your character's point of view. And there were some times when I ran into certain points of views that he had, and I was like, I don't know if I can fight for this one. I can't justify this decision that you made, you know. Um, Particularly like with, his relationship with some of the women that he encountered in his life, Um, so I would say that that's the contradiction that comes to mind for me. That was maybe like the most challenging. Also, I want to say too, and this isn't really, when you said contradictions, it made me think about the actor Roger Guinevere Smith, who did. I don't know if y'all have seen his version of Huey. He did a stage play where he played Huey, and then Spike filmed it, and so there's like a film of it you could find. I think you could find it online on YouTube or whatever. But I have to just say that, like, man, I just want to give him his flowers because what he did was so extraordinary, like so extraordinary. And I watched his performance again and again and again, just like, you know, just taken with it. He's so special, and he talks in his performance about those contradictions as well. And anyway, so I think I was just in this moment feeling like really grateful uh, to be like a part of a small part of that lineage. You know what I mean? Because he really put his, like, as we say down south, he put his foot in that. And anyway, I just want to like give him his flowers too.
Well, you both put your foot in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie from the Coalition again. I wanted to talk about the psychological fortitude of Huey, with everything that he is going through and that strength that he finds from within. As an actor portraying that role, where do you assess that, where he got that from?
It's a good question. I mean, for sure. That was one thing. It's like, and even in thinking about, just to Reggie's point, and thinking about why he made some of the choices that he made, some of the darker choices, the ones that I couldn't necessarily understand right away. One of the things that you have to consider, I had to consider, was the fact that, he's like constantly being surveilled, that, he's watched his comrades, his friends be, in prison, be killed, like COINTELPRO are doing everything they can to bust up the party. Like, he's under so much pressure all the time. Now, that doesn't justify or excuse some of the choices that he made, right? But to your point, he had to have an enormous amount of fortitude, of certitude, to continue forward. And I think a lot of that, I think he derived a lot of energy and a lot of support from his community, from the people around him. Bobby Seale, who's depicted in the series, being one of those people. The women in the party that you mentioned, they were doing so much important work and so much heavy lifting behind the scenes and alongside him. So I think, in my mind anyway, I think it was the community around him that helped to underprop him, to undergird him in those weaker moments. And I think also there was just a part of him, he just had a furnace inside of him. He just had a real burning desire to like see Black people be free and healthy and whole. And he wasn't willing to quit.
Andre, thank you for a wonderful, powerful portrayal of the great Huey Newton. We love this movie, and we love what you did with the part.
Thank you.
On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, thank you again for sharing with us. We're looking forward to seeing a lot of you this year. We know you're quite busy with a robust film schedule, so we'll be seeing more of you. And thank you, everyone, for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thanks again, Andre.
Thank you all. I
Yes.
appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.